I'm doing well, Mike.
Well, Utley's almost like Teflon in this town for a while. I mean, nobody really wants to criticize him, and he could probably do almost no wrong. But at 103, at what point do you think the Phillies need to maybe tweak something or make a big-time decision?
Well, I'm not sure what the big-time decision would be, unless you put, you blindfold Utley in a room and say, retire or else, and, I don't know what else you would have him do. I mean, I don't think anybody thought it would be this bad, that it would be 103 batting average. I mean, I certainly didn't think that. His approach has been, and I think that's the one thing that does need to change, is that he seems to be swinging the bat as if he believes himself to be still a 25 to 30 home run guy, and he's not that anymore. You don't see the ball jump off his bat the way it used to, and it hasn't for a while. Now, having said that, when he was in the lineup over the last 4 or 5 years, he was pretty productive relative to other second basemen, but you don't know how much of that was because he wasn't in the lineup every day and was actually rather rested when he did play. So what do you do with him? You can't take him out back and shoot him. I mean, you gotta play him a little bit and see if he pulls out of this, because he is, as far as the Phillies are concerned, he is their Derek Jeter. He is their Cal Ripken. They are not trading him. They are not forcing him to retire. They are not releasing him.
A lot of people for years have said, hey, you had to move Jimmy Rollins out of the leadoff spot. You had to move Ryan Howard down. They finally did. Is it at least time to get him out of the three-hole?
Oh, yeah. I would be all in favor of that. I mean, he's not a three-hole hitter anymore. The problem is who on this team is. I mean, who are you going to hit in that spot in the lineup? Cody Ashe doesn't have a lot of pop, or at least hasn't shown much this season. Jeff Francoeur, I mean, this guy wasn't even in Major League Baseball last season. So I don't know who you hit third if you don't hit Utley third. I mean, I suppose any option is a better option than a guy hitting 103. But these are in a way kind of, I don't want to say piddling questions, but I mean this is a franchise that is just beginning to turn away from the iceberg, and they've already hit it. I mean, they're kind of backing the entire ocean liner up and starting it again and trying to head in a new direction. And when they get going in that new direction, Chase Utley is not going to be here.
Yeah, and that's the interesting part, that again, a lot of people criticize him, and I don't know if there's still a lot of criticism out there for him, but when we say something drastic, is it maybe time to sit him for an extended period of time and have him be more of a part-time player?
I think we're at that point. I mean, I think whatever you can do to keep Freddie Galvin in the lineup every single day, you have to do that. And if that means playing him at second base sometimes, which you can do, you do that. If you think Cesar Hernandez has anything beyond what he's shown you so far over the last season plus, then maybe you take a look at him a little bit. But yeah, I mean, Utley, I think it's fair to say Utley is not an everyday player anymore. Beyond that, what do they do with him? I mean, if he can hit a little bit and he comes around to the idea of wanting to be traded, maybe the Phillies would accommodate him. But I don't think that's something that they're going to think of on their own or consider on their own. I think they want him to finish his career as a member of the Phillies.
Does what Howard, he's kind of turned it around a little bit. He's up to 220 to say that's turning it around. But, I mean, at least showing some signs. Does that give you any hope for Utley, or do you think he's just so broken down over the years that he's just never going to be an impactful – I don't want to say impactful is not – because I think these guys at the end of their 30s, impactful player, but at least a productive player.
Well, I mean, he'll be better than what he is now. But 103 is so bad that it's hard not to be better. I mean, that's the thing that kind of gives me pause here. You listen to Ruben Amaro and some people around the team say, well, he's hitting the worst luck of anybody you can imagine, and his batting average and balls in play is incredibly low, and it's just bad luck. Well, I'm sorry, nobody hits 103 over as long a period as Chase has just through bad luck. I mean, some of this is he is not the same guy he has been. And look, you're not going anywhere this year. You're just not. Everybody knew that going into the season. So is it worth it to run him out there every day? No, it's probably not worth it to run him out there every day. Should you sit him for a little while till he gets his head clear? Yeah, you probably should. What to do beyond that? If you have 5 games in a week, maybe you play him 3 times, and maybe twice. I don't know. I mean, like I said, in some ways, it's a question that the answer really doesn't matter beyond sentimentality, because Utley is not going to be here if and or when the Phillies are a competitive team again.
Do you think this is on Utley or Sandberg to step up and do something? Or do you think this is on Utley to say, guys, I'm hurting this team, you can sit me down?
Well, I don't think Utley would ever do that. I mean, it's just not in his DNA. I had a long talk with him in spring training, and he approaches every day now the same way that he did 5-10 years ago. So I think it's going to be incumbent upon Sandberg to try to broker some kind of arrangement here with Chase to say, look, I got to do what's right for the team here, and what's right for the team is not having you in the starting lineup every day because you are not producing enough to do that. I think this is on Sandberg more than it is Utley, because Utley's never going to give in. I mean, that's part of an athlete's makeup, and it's definitely a part of his makeup.
For so long, Utley has been kind of, a free pass kind of guy. Do you think eventually, or do you see, Mike, that this is turning a little bit, that people are starting to turn on Utley a little bit, or do you think that's just not going to happen?
No, I mean, I see people criticizing him very vigorously. I get emails. I wrote a column heading into the season basically saying, not anticipating how bad it would be for him this early in the season, saying, okay, well, look, the Phillies are going to be terrible, but at least here's Chase Utley to play as many games as he possibly can and swing the bat, as well as he possibly can, and he's closer to his old way of playing than Ryan Howard is to his. Well, okay, I was really wrong about that, but I don't get the hatred for Ryan Howard. I don't get the hatred for Chase Utley that does seem to exist out there. I'm not saying there's a lot of it, but there is some of it, and I don't know. I mean, as somebody who grew up in this town as a Phillies fan and is not necessarily a fan anymore, as somebody who covers a team, but as somebody who got to cover them when they were great and winning the World Series in 2008 and getting to the World Series in 2009, I don't see how you can feel anything other than sad for watching Chase Utley and Ryan Howard and the way they're playing now compared to the players they used to be.
I think that's a fair point to say. It's kind of sad to watch all this go down. And this Phillies team, it seemed like they had the city in the palm of their hand. I mean, they were the 1B to the Eagles for a time there. They had it, and they let it get to this. And you wonder, Mike, the Utley, the Howard, the way this is all going down, can they ever get that back? Or they never had it before. They had it for that one stretch. Why should we ever think that there's another Ryan Howard, Chase Utley, Jimmy Rollins crop anywhere down the line?
I'm not sure, Mike. I mean, that's a really good question. My colleague Bob Ford at the Inquirer raised this question, that it looks more and more like the Phillies really lucked into that string of success that they had there, where they didn't really change how they went about doing things. They made some, they kept just throwing darts at the dartboard with their eyes closed, and they found the target a few times with Utley, Howard, Rollins, Hamels, Madsen, Chooch, guys like that. And then Pat Gillick made some good supplementary moves, was fortunate to sign Jason Worth. Ed Wade gets Shane Victorino as a Rule 5 guy. And before you know it, we're celebrating a World Series in Philadelphia. But they didn't change their approach after that. And not only that, they didn't make the hard decisions that you would have needed to make when they needed to make them to sustain this success. I mean, Shane Victorino is younger than these guys and is still a productive major league player. Hunter Pence is younger than these guys. And if he's healthy, he's a more productive major league player. Those are the guys you needed to build around if you were going to sustain this at a certain point. It wasn't going to be Utley and Howard and Rollins. And they were unwilling to do that because Utley, Rollins, and Howard were all their own guys and were the kind of the centerpieces of the franchise and the organization. So, we're too far gone at this point to try to build anything now. And you have to hope at some point that they find these caliber prospects again. I don't know whether they will. I'm more hopeful that they will uncover some decent pitching prospects because of some of the moves they made over the last year or so than I am that they'll dig up some great position players again.
Well, Mike, and you also, I guess you'll wonder, Utley and Howard and that group has held them back and got them to this point, but are they going to continue to stunt their growth by continuing to put them out there? Is that something that will continue to hold this franchise back as long as those guys are still here? Well,
I mean, I think the question is, other than Darren Ruff, who else are you going to put out there? Dominic Brown is down in AAA, apparently thinking he's God's gift to left fielders or right fielders, and he's hitting under 200. I mean, I guess they're trying to teach him a lesson down there. But at some point, you have to find out for certain, once and for all, what does this guy have? You're finding out that Freddie Galvis, it looks like, is a pretty good ball player. Certainly an excellent defensive infielder. But has the ship sailed on Darren Ruff? They had an opportunity to find out what Darren Ruff really was, and now he's 28, and who knows what he is. Maybe he really just can't hit right-handed pitching, but it would have been nice to know that a year or two ago. So, this is, as I mentioned earlier, used the metaphor earlier, this is a franchise that moves like the Titanic trying to avoid the iceberg, and, we're already at the point where Kate and Leo are, hanging on to the lifeboat, and it ain't looking good.
Mike Sielski is with us, the columnist at Philly.com, the Philadelphia Inquirer. And obviously another story that has creeped in over the last couple of days is LaShawn McCoy's comments that are going to come out in ESPN, the magazine. And, are these just unfair, just shots at Chip Kelly because he's still unhappy? Or has anybody suggested and given any evidence that there is something here with Chip Kelly? Or is this the lingering effects of that controversial Riley Cooper situation?
I think it's probably a little bit of all that, in the sense that I think the Cooper situation plays into it. I think Shady's bitterness plays into it. And quite frankly, I think Shady's immaturity plays into this as well, because he clearly has not thought this through well enough. He can't possibly have thought it through, beyond anything, beyond a second grade level. I mean, think about this for a second, okay? He has said that Chip Kelly wants to get rid and has quickly gotten rid of all the good black players on the Eagles roster. Okay. So if you're Shady McCoy and you're in a room with Jason Peters and Jordan Matthews and D'Amico Ryans and, the list of other black players who are on the Eagles roster, what do you say to those guys? Do you say, hey, Jason, are you just a lousy left tackle, or are you not authentically black? Because it's got to be one or the other. Either you're a good player and, Chip Kelly, either you're a black player who's not very good, which is one reason he suggests Chip Kelly would keep you, or you're a good player who is not authentically black. And that takes us into a whole different realm. And, he clearly did not think this through in any regard. He's, he's affixed this to Chip now, whether Chip deserves it or not. The word racist is the 21st century's answer to the Scarlet Letter. Once that's stuck on you, it's really hard to get it off. And now it's on Chip Kelly for, whether he deserves it or not. And, I think this whole thing is ridiculous. I think it just I don't get it. I think it's really kind of an insidious thing for LaShawn McCoy to have done to Chip Kelly. And, does the Riley Cooper thing play into it? Yes, it does, because people are looking around and saying, how is Riley Cooper still on this roster, but Deshaun Jackson and Shady McCoy aren't? And that certainly plays into it. That doesn't mean that Chip Kelly is a racist. It doesn't mean Riley Cooper's a particularly good wide receiver, or that what he said wasn't, back in 2013 wasn't contemptible. But it doesn't mean Chip Kelly's a racist. Yeah,
the area, Mike, where with the Riley Cooper is where I wonder where the African-American players may have had some anger is, okay, Cooper's on the team. They didn't cut him at that time. But they gave him the extension, and I guess they're wondering, why is he getting money and we're not? Not that I'm not sticking up for McCoy at all, because I agree with you. I think it's preposterous what he's saying here. But I wonder if that's where a lot of the anger comes from, is say, what, you're willing to pay him that money, but you're not willing to keep us around.
Yeah, I'm sure some of them, if you shot them up with sodium pentothal, I'd be willing to bet LaShawn McCoy and Deshaun Jackson and maybe some other guys feel that way. But, Chip hasn't exactly softened his criticism of Evan Mathis for wanting to be traded. And, Chip basically said over the weekend, we've given Evan the chance to be traded, and he can't work out a trade. Doesn't seem like anybody wants him. That's not exactly, treating a guy with respect. And Mathis is a free thinker. He thinks on his own. He's cut from a different cloth than a lot of guys in that locker room. And that seems to be the kind of thing that, black or white, Chip Kelly doesn't necessarily want. He wants guys who are going to completely fall in line with his culture and what he wants them to do. And I honestly don't think Chip cares whether you're black or white. I really don't. And I don't think that the idea of, falling in line like that is necessarily a racist idea. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe someone who is black, someone who is African-American can tell me different, but I just don't see it.
Mike, last one for you. Last week, Mariota to the Eagles was almost as done of deal that you would ever saw in the history of the league, yet it did not happen. Oh, my gosh. But Sam Bradford remains. Do you feel that Eagle fans will ever embrace Sam Bradford? Will he get a fair shake?
If he goes 12-4 and stays healthy all year, sure he will. I mean, I think that's kind of a ridiculous question. I mean, I think people are skeptical about Bradford, and rightly so, because he hasn't stayed healthy in his NFL career, even in his college career. And it's fair to ask, did Chip Kelly take too big a risk in trading away Nick Foles and giving up a second-round pick to get Sam Bradford? But if Bradford stays healthy and the Eagles are winning games and he's playing well, people will be fine with him. I mean, remember how Charlie Manuel was regarded in this town 10 years ago when he started out as the Phillies manager. Dumb Huckleberry, can't make a double switch, doesn't know what he's doing, can't handle the pitching staff, can't talk to the media. And 3 years later, Charlie was a folk hero because the Phillies won the World Series. And he's, to this day, I would argue one of the most beloved sports figures in this town. So, yeah, you win, and Philadelphia will love you for it.
We hope that's the case. I agree. I hope the people embrace Bradford as well, and we'll see how he is received. And you wonder, an interesting story with him is, what if he's not ready to play in any preseason games? Do you just throw him out there in week number 1, completely devoid of playing any preseason games after sitting out for 2 years?
I don't know. I mean, I think it would depend on how he looked in practice. I would be skeptical of that, sure.
Yeah.
I certainly would. At least, when Chip got here, at least Michael Vick and Nick Foles had the entire preseason and training camp and OTAs and mini camps to get to know the offense and to run it in practice. Bradford hasn't had that opportunity yet. I mean, he's going, in these workouts they're having without pads, but who knows how much preparation time he's going to get before the regular season or the preseason actually begins. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. I don't know. I mean, they gave Mark Sanchez a 2-year contract to be their backup and prospective starter in a pinch for a reason. So we'll see.
Sure will. And more from Mike Sielski, Philly.com, at Mike Sielski on Twitter. And we'll see where this offseason goes for Philadelphia in all the Eagles, the Sixers, and the Flyers, who don't have a coach yet either. I'm sure Mike will have opinions on that as well at Philly.com. Thanks so much, Mike.
Anytime, Mike.